So, Aliens Colonial Marines is not remembered as a game with amazing visuals or impeccable AI, and yet the game has a lot to offer. It did continue the story of what transpired on Hadley's Hope after it was obliterated, and it has more than a few references to the source material, which makes it a game that Alien fans keep close to their hearts. I mean, imagine walking through the ruins of Hadley's Hope. But there's something else that proves that ACM is not as bad as you may think. It has to be the ferocious and intimidating xenomorph called the Raven. It was a beast like no other, something that could not be taken down by gunfire, that had a face based on the original but scrapped alien design, and it was much larger than your regular drone and almost resembled the Praetorian xenomorphs. In this video, we'll explore everything there is to learn about Raven, from its role in the game to its physical appearance, and theories about its origin. But first, let's get ourselves a bit of context here and just understand the Raven story in a better fashion. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, let's begin. A prelude to Raven's history. In James Cameron's Aliens, Corporal Dwayne Hicks sent a distress call. It was picked up 17 weeks later by a battalion of Colonial Marines, who immediately began their journey towards LV-426 on their spacecraft, the USS Sephora. The craft docked with USS Sulaco, which was the same craft that was used by Ripley, Hicks, and others to reach LV-426, after the colony of Hadley's Hope had mysteriously lost all contact. However, this was curious because USS Sulaco had last been sighted near the prison planet from Alien 3. Nevertheless, the Marines go inside, but are shocked to see that the USS Sulaco has become infested with the biomechanical monsters that we affectionately call xenomorphs. The initial onslaught naturally kills several of the Marines. A few survivors, including the likes of Private Bella Clarison, Private O'Neill, and Corporal Christopher Winter, also come across several Weyland-Yutani PMCs. These private military contractors were deployed by Weyland-Yutani to study the xenomorph facility set up on Acheron, aka LV-426. While they were officially providing security to the scientists working at the facility, the PMCs also ensured by any means necessary that the scientists did their jobs and that there were no defection or rebellion. Of course, these hostile mercenaries didn't want Corporal Winter and others to find out that they were breeding xenomorphs for research and experiments, so the PMCs launched an attack on the Marines. The small but high-octane battle between Sephora and Sulaco leaves both ships destroyed, but Sephora, Android Bishop, Winter, O'Neill, Bella, Lieutenant Reed, and their leader Captain Cruz managed to get down to LV-426 in the hopes of taking shelter in the now-ruined Hadley's Hope colony. Since the detonation of the colony's atmosphere processing unit, the colony had been completely obliterated. Down below, they once again faced the wrath of the violent mercenaries protecting Weyland-Yutani's dark and demented secret research. The group, including Winter and Bishop, set out on foot to reach Hadley's Hope, where Corporal Winter used his Comtech hacking device to open the airlock. After entering the facility, they set up motion sensors so that they could track every movement and get alerted in case of any hostiles, be it the PMCs or the xenomorphs. Things like sensors and airlocks constantly remind the players of the movies on which the game is based. Although Aliens Colonial Marines is not known for its graphics, it does manage to build an atmosphere filled with terror and claustrophobia. Anyway, once the sensors had been placed in position, the one in the mortuary went offline. Winter went to reconnected, only to be attacked by a horde of xenomorphs who attacked him and Neil. After managing to evade them, they returned to the operations room to find that Cruz was also dealing with a few xenomorphs. Together, they repelled the xenomorphs. But later, Cruz ordered Winter to get the sentry gun from the main hall, and that's how many other Xenos were dispatched into nothingness. Once the all-known Xenos seemed to be dead, Cruz focused on another problem, and the following events would actually lead to a face-off between Winter and Raven, the dark star of today's video. They had overloaded the facility's generator while cycling the power to the mess hall, so Winter and O'Neill were asked to go relate the tower and rescue Bella and Reed before they could escape. However, Winter and O'Neill had to go through the sewers before they could reach Bella and Reed. The sewers were also infested with numerous Xenos, but the men managed to stand their ground. However, once they reached close to the sewer, they were attacked by this strange and mysterious-looking xenomorph. Yes, it was the Raven. Right after they reached the elevator, the Raven ambushed Winter. Unable to fend off the might of this huge creature, Winter found himself taken by Raven to its lair, where the peculiar-looking xenomorph cocooned Winter. However, the Raven soon left Winter alone. Taking advantage of this, Winter managed to free himself from the hive resin. He immediately contacted O'Neill, who was correctly surprised to learn that Winter was still alive. But reuniting with O'Neill would have been difficult because O'Neill had dropped his tracking beacon back in the elevator. Meanwhile, Raven was back and noticed that Winter had freed himself, which of course meant that the chase sequence was in order. He managed to open a panel on the floor, jump through it, and escape from the hive. The Raven pursued Winter, but the Marine managed to get out of the creature's reach just in the nick of time. Raven followed, and now a window separated the two. Just as Raven started banging the window in a bid to break through it and get to Winter, the Marine escaped through a small window. Raven eventually broke through the window, but it was one dead Marine too late. Winter kept moving through the vent and ended up in the sewers, where he found the dead body of Private Hudson. Going deeper inside, our man found the dead remains of several boiler xenomorphs. These were more or less like the regular xenomorphs, but they seemed to have certain boils filled with acidic blood. It has been suggested that the boilers are xenomorphs who went through some serious degree of radiation or mutation. Nevertheless, O'Neill informed Winter that there was yet another boiler that was alive and prowling the sewers, so it was best to move past it stealthily. It seemed that the creatures were only attracted to sounds, and even if you got too close to one, all you had to do was remain extremely motionless and silent and let the creature move away. Winter came across a few live boilers that he managed to evade before meeting with O'Neill. He informed him about the tracking beaker at the elevator. They began closing in on a signal in a bid to escape from the sewers. The two of them took separate paths to reach the elevator, but unfortunately for Winter, Raven had once again found him. By now, O'Neill had reached the elevator, but Winter had not. As Winter closed in on the elevator, Raven finally revealed its presence from the shadows at the other end of the corridor. But Winter successfully wielded the door shut and used the elevator to go up and reunite with O'Neill, who also gave Winter his gear. The final battle with the Raven. After a few high-octane encounters with the xenomorphs, the group reunited and managed to restore the uplink, but the war was far from over as Raven appeared before the Marines, who opened fire. However, the Raven was a sink for incoming assault. Its strong and armored hide was built to take strong punishment. With their weapons ineffective against the Raven, the Marines knew the best thing to do was to run. So they split up into groups and decided to rendezvous in the operations room. They encountered more xenomorph variants, like lurkers. Winter and O'Neill were found by the Raven in the garage, and had attempted to break through the door but found little success. Unfortunately, they soon realized that O'Neill was missing, and to make matters worse, his tracker was moving with the Raven. The group was now divided between those who wanted to rescue O'Neill and those who wanted to escape immediately. However, it was decided that saving their comrade was paramount. The group went after the Raven and O'Neill, and although there were a few hurdles and xenomorph-sized hiccups on the way, it was Winter who ended Raven's terrorizing life by going full Ellen Ripley and using the power loader on the Raven. What makes Raven's appearance so peculiar? The Raven xenomorph is distinct from its run-of-the-mill, bloodthirsty counterparts. What sets the Raven apart is its fairly larger build and the fact that it's enveloped in a resilient chitin carapace that provides exceptional protection. We just saw how the Marines struggled to subdue it with their weapons. Interestingly, the Raven primarily relies on its powerful hind legs for mobility, much like the imposing queens. This stance makes the Raven look exceedingly tall and terrifying. If we further examine its features, we'll find that the Raven has a head resembling that of a xenomorph drone, and also has a ridge-like carapace on the cranium adorned with a row of huge spikes. Its facial region, however, is the most disturbing and defining characteristic of the Raven's appearance. It has scars that reveal traces of human-like characteristics beneath the surface, which further substantiates the fact that xenomorphs often take on the traits of the organism within which they are gestating. The Raven's facial features include discernible eye sockets, a nasal cavity, and jaws that, unlike xenomorphs, display a strikingly human quality. Its teeth, unlike the metallic silver hues common with xenomorphs, take on a more human-like appearance, with two small tusk-like projections flanking the lower jaw. Additionally, the absence of the pronounced canine teeth seen in Praetorians and Queens further distinguishes the Raven from its regular cousins. Size-wise, the Raven exceeds the typical xenomorph dimensions, rivaling the stature of the Praetorians and even Queens, standing tall and imposing. Does it mean that the Raven is more of a xenomorph cast than a xenomorph variant? What I mean is that it feels almost like the Raven is an intermediate cast between a drone and a Praetorian. As far as its voice is concerned, the Raven breaks from the usual screeches and hisses associated with xenomorphs. Instead, it produces a deafening, resonant roar that can carry across considerable distances. At times, it emits snarling sounds, much like lurkers, which may suggest a connection to leadership roles within the xenomorph hierarchy. It's worth noting that the Raven's facial semblance to human features draws inspiration from the original Alien design, where a human skull played a subtle but impactful part in its overall appearance. However, this concept was not included in the final film. What about the Raven's origin? Over time, several theories have emerged regarding the origins of the Raven xenomorph due to its exceptional size and unique characteristics. One hypothesis posits that Raven could be a result of the creature that burst from the chest of the pilot aboard the derelict spaceship, potentially making it a jockey xenomorph. However, the considerable time gap between the derelict ship crash and the events of alien colonial marines, which span over 2,000 years, makes this theory unlikely. While xenomorph eggs have demonstrated remarkable longevity, the same cannot be confirmed for adult xenomorphs. Another theory suggests that Raven and other xenomorph strains in the game might be outcomes of radiation exposure stemming from the explosion of the atmosphere processing plant on Aliens. Nevertheless, the novelization of the film clarifies that the deconstruction of an atmospheric processor doesn't result in radioactive fallout. Additionally, in Stasis Interrupted, Michael Whalen discloses that all xenomorph specimens at the colony were eradicated during the atmosphere processing plant's explosion. Ultimately, it remains plausible that the Raven represents a xenomorph that has simply endured long enough to undergo further evolution, much like the Praetorian cast, or perhaps its naturally occurring mutation. Marvelous verdict. In 2013, Aliens Colonial Marines was one of the highly anticipated video game releases, but it ultimately left players disappointed due to the numerous shortcomings in its execution. The question lingers as to whether the game's actual quality was as bad as players remember, or if the uproar surrounding its troubled production exacerbated the disappointment. Despite its broken promises, subpar visuals, and flawed AI, the game still managed to salvage something from its source material, albeit falling short of reaching its full potential. One aspect in which Aliens Colonial Marines showed promise was its storyline, which continued directly after the events of James Cameron's 1986 film Aliens. The prospect of revisiting LV-426 in the aftermath of the catastrophic explosion at Hadley's Hope hinted at a deeper narrative beyond Ripley and Newt entering hypersleep. Despite numerous plot holes and inconsistencies, the essence of Aliens was palpable. The game recreated the claustrophobic corridors, incorporated movie-quality music and sound effects, and introduced new breeds of xenomorphs and a story centered around a fresh group of Marines investigating the mysteries of the lost colony on LV-426. The abundance of references to the Aliens film made the players feel immersed in the iconic universe, even though the execution didn't quite reach the desired heights. It managed to capture the industrial, dystopian elements that contributed to the film franchise success. Admittedly, the game's implementation left much to be desired, but it deserves credit for the effort. The Colonial Marine theme served as the linchpin holding the experience together, albeit somewhat haphazardly. One of the game's most amazing moments was the return to the surface of LV-426, which had been transformed into a wreck following the explosive events of the atmospheric processing plant in Aliens. While the game didn't provide much of an explanation for the preservation of the area, it managed to create an atmospheric and nostalgic experience that allowed players to travel to Hadley's Hope, fulfilling a long-held dream for fans of the franchise. For die-hard Alien fans, this connection alone held some appeal. Well, that's it for today, everybody, and if you liked today's content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.